40 years ago, we opened our doors with one mission in mind.
We'll be right back with the top 10 songs of 1983.
To sell quality American-made vehicles at a fair price.
You have arrived.
And we've loved every minute of the ride. Celebrating 40 years of Two Rivers Ford.
Let's see if I remember how to do this. What's happening? Welcome in on this Monday morning. So lovely to have you here with Lucas and myself until 1 o'clock. Jump in at any point if you would like to. 615-737-1045. That's the number. Did you miss me? The silence is deafening.
Let's make that a rhetorical question.
I walked in here. He's already fighting me on all kinds of different things. I give him the show for 3 days. All of a sudden, you know better than I do.
Because I don't give a damn about Jalen Ramsey. This is March.
It is March. We got brackets, kids. Not necessarily the best draw for the University of Tennessee, though. I did watch a fair amount of basketball while on vacation. And obviously, NFL free agency, tampering underway. We'll get more, we'll get official transactions coming through once the new league year begins on Wednesday. News is going to fly fast and furiously, so we're happy to be back for a busy week of work. I think we should start with the brackets, though, because basically the rest of the way is going to be football. We now have the chaos that March ultimately brings. Conference tournaments were a lot of fun, delivered as they typically do. Everything looked highly competitive except for the SEC, where Alabama just kind of made that look casual. An absolute ass-kicking of Texas A&M yesterday at Bridgestone Arena, and very much solidifying themselves as one of the top 4 seeds.
The overall top seed.
In this bracket that we will start to pick apart. There's just, did you flood the entire studio with brackets? There are 75 of these things in here.
Printed out NCAA and NIT brackets.
Okay, I didn't realize you like basketball this much.
I love March this much. I love March Madness.
That's fair. But like for me to have for each one of us to have an NIT bracket sitting at our stations when we walk into the studio, just because you're trying to snort some NCAA March Madness, is funny to me.
The insanity of March Madness is the second best sports tournament on planet Earth, in my opinion.
Second to
the World Cup.
Okay, I think that's fair. And it's going to be phenomenal. We're going to have games on during what is our normal time slot. We'll be preempted for a little bit of it, although we will be on every day this week. We've got some cool stuff going on at Party Foul Thursday and Friday that we'll tell you more about if you want to watch some basketball with us. I think Brent and Slay, too, right? They're going to be hanging out at least one day. That's the understanding. I should probably check my email. Anyway, so for what this means at this point, for the University of Tennessee, we'll spend a little more time later on, but there's a couple of different ways that you can look at this. The number 1 seeds at this point, as Lucas mentioned, Alabama overall number 1, Houston, Kansas, and Purdue fill out the top 4 seeds. You move down to the 2s, Arizona, Texas, UCLA, and the Marquette Golden Eagles. You have to keep scrolling for a while before you find the University of Tennessee as a 4 seed, which is also what my Indiana Hoosiers are at this particular point. I'm very excited to see how Tennessee if Tennessee can respond. And the Vanderbilt snub, man, I saw the second half of Vandy's game against Kentucky. And I saw Jerry Stackhouse's post-game interview on the SEC Network desk with Ron Slay and the rest of the crew, Dari Noka and all them. And I really thought, despite the way that they got summarily handled, I would say, by Texas A&M, that they had done enough to show that they were a competitive enough basketball team to be in the field of 68. They weren't even first 4 out. That's the disrespect.
Well, I don't think they qualified via any of the metrics that the committee uses at this point.
I understand, but bleep the metrics. Look
I'm
at
with
the
you.
basketball.
Yeah,
which is Jerry Stackhouse's whole argument based on the news clippings that I've seen from him lately.
Vanderbilt embodies the type of team that should be in the NCAA tournament with what they've done over the last couple months.
And so I suppose there has to be a standard for these things to eliminate a lot of these arguments taking place with a lot of different programs around the country, because I'm sure Vanderbilt's not the only team where people are making the case looking around, at least in their local markets. Like, what the hell? Did you not watch them play their games down the stretch? And, yeah, I mean, they had a rough go early on, but did enough, I thought, to right the ship. Either way, a lot of interesting matchups in this tournament, which we'll spend some more time on. But at this point, I think the University of Tennessee, they are still one of the most imposing physically teams, I think, in this tournament. And that does matter for them. But Rick Barnes, I guess, what did you make of the way that they lost in the SEC tournament? Because that, I think, a lot of us looked at Alabama and the way that Alabama had been playing and said, I think we went into this saying Alabama, Texas A&M, Tennessee, and Kentucky, am I missing one, who could have theoretically won the SEC tournament here in Nashville. I think those were the 4 programs, the 4 teams that we decided on prior to me taking off.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't think there was a lot of optimism for Tennessee's chances to win the SEC tournament. Like, I don't think the disappointment is that Tennessee did not go to Bridgestone Arena and win the SEC tournament. To me, the disappointment is how they lost and how the second half developed against Missouri, the way they turned it over, the way they gave up 49 second-half points. I don't know what it is about this Missouri offense that has given Tennessee fits all season, but the first time they played, Mizzou puts up 86 points, by far the most Tennessee has conceded all season, and they almost did it again. They almost crossed that 80 mark again the other day. Tennessee just had no answer for them defensively in the second half, defensive rebounding, late turnovers. So I think it was the way they lost in the second half that is the cause for disappointment, because I think everybody can agree Tennessee would have run into the same buzzsaw Mizzou did of Alabama in the semifinal.
So looking at the way that Tennessee finished alongside the Missouri loss, 4-6 in their last 10 games at this point, the offensive issues that we've documented at great length throughout the course of the season still being a thing, and when they have the defensive failures or a lack of defensive answers the way that they seem to against Missouri, as Lucas said, those are ultimately the results that you have. They will play, they have Louisiana.
Sun Belt champion Louisiana Lafayette.
The Ragin' Cajuns, baby. That's a 26-win basketball team this year, kids.
Well, and can you tell me one thing that every team in Tennessee's half of the East region has in common other than Tennessee? Look at the bracket. Purdue, Memphis, FAU, Duke, Oral Roberts, Louisiana Lafayette, and then whoever comes out between Texas Southern and FDU.
Okay, repeat the question.
The one thing that all of these teams have in common, all those teams I just listed, they have one thing in common.
Why don't you tell me?
They're all conference champs.
Ooh. You're kidding.
Now let's even remove whoever comes out as the 16 seed to play Purdue as the 1. So let's look at Louisiana Lafayette, Duke, Purdue, Memphis, and FAU. All conference champs. FAU won Conference USA. Memphis blew out Houston in the American. Houston without.
I did see that yesterday, and that was start to finish dominance.
Well,
like Memphis really didn't let them up for air at all.
Houston's got to figure out life without a couple players that are missing due to injury right now.
Yeah.
But Purdue wins the Big Ten. They beat Penn State. Duke wins the ACC over Virginia. Louisiana wins the Sun Belt. Collectively, those 5 teams combined have 29 straight wins.
Not ideal if you're a team who is looking for their own sense of momentum and hasn't really been able to find it in about a month and a half at this point.
Yeah, a lot of teams playing their best basketball in Tennessee's part of the bracket.
So we'll have a ton of time to talk March Madness throughout the course of this month, and we'll get back to the Vols, Vandy, the seed reactions, the matchups that we're most looking forward to, and we'll tell you more about what we have going on at Party Foul later this week. In fact, why don't I tell you right now about what we got going on at Party Foul later this week? Lucas and I are going to be doing the show from Party Foul. We want you to come hang out with us for the March Madness tip-off with 104.5 The Zone on Thursday. That's this Thursday, March the 16th. Party Foul in Murfreesboro, and on Friday, March 17th at Party Foul in Cool Springs. So we'll be on the air at 10 o'clock. I think, are we only on for an hour those 2 days?
10 to 11.
10 to 11, and then the basketball begins. So if you want to come out, if you're in Murfreesboro on Thursday, Cool Springs on Friday, we'll be kicking it at Party Foul. We'll do the show for an hour. We'll watch some hoops together. It'll be a great time, so we hope that you come out and hang out with us. You can listen all week for your chance to win a reserved table. Ooh, bottle service at Party Foul? Is that what we're giving away? Oh, $50 worth of bottle service, $50 worth of Party Foul gift cards. To join us for more information, visit 1045thezone.com and come hang out on Thursday and Friday. It's going to be a great time. We also have the bracket challenge going on. We'll tell you a little bit more about that later. I got some tweets about the 1045 The Zone bracket challenge, and since Lucas is literally drowning us all in brackets in here, we'll give you the information on that later on today. But massive NFL trade happening yesterday. A lot of news, a lot of pieces shifting around. Free agency beginning to ramp up with the legal tampering period underway. We'll talk about Jalen Ramsey getting moved to the Dolphins and the implications of that across the league, particularly here in Tennessee. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. Welcome back to the show on this Monday. We got a little bit of breaking news, as I'm sure will be the case. Is it worth doing the breaking news sounder to run me over just for the fun of it, or is there going to be too much going on?
I don't think it's enough of a blockbuster to do that.
You don't think so? Okay. So I got Ian Rapp.
Breaking sports news on 104.5 The Zone.
I hate you so much.
I don't understand how you don't see that coming.
It's every time, and it's honestly like we can't even fake it. It's just I get so upset. What's the breaking news, or do I get to read it now?
You can read it.
Okay, very good. Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network. Sources. The Patriots are trading tight end Jonnu Smith to the Falcons as a former big-ticket free agent heads elsewhere and creates space for New England. Jonnu did jack bleep in New England after they went just completely crazy, got drunk with spending in 2021. He was a big-ticket free agent item, as was Hunter Henry, I think in that same cycle, the former Chargers tight end, and obviously did not pan out in ways that were tangible, although New England's got a lot bigger offensive problems at this point. And it kind of leads us into this conversation about a massive NFL trade yesterday. Jalen Ramsey got moved from the Rams to the Dolphins for a 2023 third-round pick. It's the 77th overall selection in this year's draft, and tight end Hunter Long. So that will be processed officially on Wednesday, as all these deals will be, when the new league year begins. And Jalen Ramsey, who has won a Super Bowl in Los Angeles, experienced, the struggles of what it is, the after effects of the Super Bowl, the hangover of the Super Bowl, probably harder than a lot of other teams have, the way that the Rams did it. Very excited about being moved to his third team in his career from L.A. to Miami. You could do it. It's gotten a lot better for him since Jacksonville. Los Angeles, now Miami. He seems to be in a good spot. He's got 3 years remaining on a contract, and the Dolphins, as a part of the deal, agreed to guarantee the next 2 seasons on Jalen Ramsey's deal at this point. So he's made the Pro Bowl 6 times. He's a 3-time All-Pro, and he's largely considered one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. Or was at one point. More and more you see highlights of Jalen Ramsey getting taken on a ride on Sundays across the internet. It didn't feel like he had one of his better seasons, but, that you could say that about just about anybody on the Rams, except apparently Bobby Wagner.
Look at the compensation compared to the last time he was drafted.
Traded, I'm sorry.
What would you have last time he was drafted?
Do you have the trade compensation handy? Because I don't remember that trade off the top of my head. I know it is less than what he was moved from Jacksonville for.
It was a first-round pick. He was traded for a 2020 first-round pick to the Rams. Jacksonville got a 2020 first-rounder and a 2021 first-rounder and a 2021 fourth-rounder.
Okay.
Compared to a third and an obscure tight end this year.
Don't respect Hunter Long.
Sorry, Hunter Long.
Obscure. Disrespectful. I think that this is a fascinating move, and I wonder if it's going to be the biggest trade that we see at this point. Aaron Rodgers is still out there. We've talked a lot about the Derrick Henry stuff. I'm sure you guys got into it a lot over the course of the week when I was out. In fact, what did you make of how did you guys discuss the conflicting, because now we have source-offs all over the place, conflicting reports about Derrick Henry being shot. Derrick Henry's not being shot, but they're listening to offers. That gets confirmed by Albert Breer of the NFL, or rather of Sports Illustrated, and people are still bent out of shape about Derrick. Was there any furthering of the discussion around the conflicting reports with Derrick?
I'm confused on how they could be conflicting. I'm confused, and this is not to take a shot at Jonathan Jones of CBS, but I'm confused at how after Mike Silver comes out and says he has spoken to current general managers that have told him, yeah, Titans are, not on the trade block. Like it's not all the way to one end of the spectrum, but yeah, they are listening. They are listening about a potential trade for Derrick Henry. So Jonathan Jones comes out and says, yeah, no, they're not. Like, I don't understand how you can do that unless someone with the Titans just told him, no, that's not true. But otherwise, like you went around to every general manager and they told you, no, we haven't heard anything about Derrick Henry. Like Mike Silver can talk to one general manager says, yeah, I've talked to the Titans about Henry. I don't understand. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard for me to think that you can just come out and say, no, that's not true. That hasn't happened.
The whole thing's weird. But we do know that they have been at least listening to people who are offering them things for Derek services at this time. That much has been confirmed. So, long story short, like one of the players who we've been discussing all offseason long as being a trade target has been moved. The other three on the board, Derek, a recent addition to this, but Derrick Henry, Aaron Rodgers, DeAndre Hopkins. Those are those three, and Jalen Ramsey have been the talking points of the offseason as far as star players, name brands, and commodities that are still, I mean, everybody but, and really you can't even say that about Hopkins despite him missing so much of the last season. All still productive players. I assume Aaron Rodgers is going to look a little more like Aaron Rodgers once his thumb gets right, provided he can stay healthy. Provided any of these guys can stay healthy and stay on the field. They're all still productive NFL players at this point. They just cost a whole hell of a lot more than they used to when they kind of got to when they played themselves into that the upper echelon of talent that we talk about in the league. So the Dolphins needed a corner. They informed Byron Jones, who, if you remember, just went on a bit of a tweet storm about don't take the shots, don't get the surgeries, don't take the pills that they offer you on these things. Byron Jones, apparently, that he would be released when the new league year began, and they also restructured the contracts of Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb, and left tackle Teron Armstead to make some of this room possible. Jalen Ramsey was at an event as this deal was being negotiated. He and his agent, David Mulugheta, were at speaking at the HBCU Battle of the Brains competition that was being emceed by our friend Cam Wolf of the NFL Network. So Cam's chilling in the hallway with Mulugheta and Jalen Ramsey, and he gets a selfie interview with Jalen Ramsey as the deal is being completed with his agent on the phone. This is the audio courtesy of Cameron Wolf.
With the newest Dolphin, Jalen Ramsey. How you feeling?
I feel great, man. This is something that I was praying about for a long time. Then David made it happen. I'm excited, man. I'm super excited to be close to the fam.
Shout out to David.
Newest Dolphin, baby.
Fam back in Florida. It's gonna be fun.
What are Dolphins fans getting from you?
Man, I'm gonna get a leader, one of the biggest competitors ever. Gonna make my teammates better. All the guys that I got around me. Obviously, you know, you got X-Man, and you got Fine, and you got the D-line that you know going crazy with Christian holding that down in the offense. We already know what they talking about. Tyreek, Taylor, Tua, man. Come on, man. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be exciting. We're gonna get to work though, for sure.
Already talking about training camp. Tyreek been tweeting about it. What them one-on-ones gonna look like?
It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. I'm glad it happened in practice now, and I ain't gotta guard him in the game no more because he a problem. But he's gonna make me better, and I'm gonna make him better. It's gonna be cool.
You say you can't hit him like you did in the Pro Bowl.
Nah, I ain't never gonna do that again. That's why I had to. You feel me? Maybe I was foreseeing something, and I had to take that opportunity then and there. You know.
Absolutely. Last one for me. I know that you have been on a championship team.
Yeah.
You see the roster they had. They made the move for Tyreek and Bradley. Now where are you guys in comparison to competing for that championship?
Man, that's always the goal is to try to get back to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. So I'm just another piece of the puzzle. I ain't gonna say that I'm gonna bring all that there, but I'm gonna bring that piece of the puzzle there. I got some experience in it, and I'm gonna hopefully help those guys visualize it, and then we're gonna go get it. But we gotta put the work in though.
So that's Cameron Wolf with Jalen Ramsey, the former Ram, now Dolphin, as of yesterday's transaction. I don't know who the next player, who the next biggest player that's going to get moved is. Rodgers seems like he's the most likely, but I don't know how you can kind of stand on any solid ground with that dude. It was reported, at least I saw it was reported while I was out on vacation, that the Jets contingent had flown, including the owner, Nathaniel Hackett as a part of the traveling party, had flown to California to meet with Rodgers, and I'd seen a number of different reports about those meetings going well. Now, I had also seen conflicting reports from SNY about a deal being agreed to in principle. All Rodgers had to do was decide whether he wanted to play for the Jets or not, and they can get the deal done. I saw Tom Pelissero dispute that report yesterday. So it's a really, really muddled situation around Aaron Rodgers right now. Derrick Henry, man, I mean, it does seem like they want to keep him, but everybody has a price. And I think that Derek's situation, while it's not an easy trade, by the way, like it's not like even if they were actively trying to move him, it's not something that becomes plug and play. I had seen Robert had told me last night, Lucas, I don't know if you had seen this, but the idea that Dalvin Cook is also potentially being shopped, or at least they're listening to offers on Dalvin Cook in Minnesota. If there are other running backs like that out there on the trade market with Derek, I honestly think that makes Derek's value less to the point to where they may not be willing to make a deal.
Dalvin Cook is 2 years younger than Derrick Henry.
And is thought of as a more well-rounded player at the position, better value for the trade. So, and listen, I'm not saying that I still think that Derrick Henry has an argument for the best running back in football, based on what I saw last year, even as if it was a house of horrors at Nissan Stadium.
Yeah, but best running back in football is
doesn't
different.
Mean that you're the best value.
It's right. Best runner of the football in football is different from best running back in football.
That is correct. So I think that Titans fans have to keep that in mind and understand that even if Derek doesn't get moved, it doesn't mean that they're not looking for the best solution. Yeah, I was sitting in the airport on the way home Saturday, and I was thinking of just something to write ahead of free agency on Derek, and just the idea that they need to be pragmatic about their decisions. If it's good value for both sides, then make the Derek deal. Move Derrick Henry, get what draft capital you can if you're satisfied with the draft capital. Potentially, if there's players involved with that are in flexible contract situations or in more affordable contract situations at positions that you need, that should obviously be taken into consideration too. But if the market's not right, or the market gets a little bit more saturated with players who would be better value, then yeah, it's in their best interest to hold on to Derrick Henry for the time being in the last year of his deal and let this thing kind of play out. Then there's the circumstance with DeAndre Hopkins and how it kind of gets complicated a little bit by Lamar Jackson, because you know who needs a wide receiver badly? So much so that the wide receivers are tweeting about what the general manager is saying about the wide receiver position on the podium. Baltimore could really use somebody like DeAndre Hopkins. That would actually make a ton of sense. But Lamar's circumstance has everything in flux, where when last I saw, the Ravens had placed the non-exclusive franchise tag on him, saying that basically, all right, you don't believe us in us telling you that you're not worth the kind of money that you think you are? Okay, fine. We're going to make a very cold business decision. We're going to let the rest of the league tell you that you're not worth what you think you're worth, plus 2 first-round picks, and then see what you say and come back to us with a better offer. That whole situation has gone into complete tailspin.
I'm starting to wonder if hardly any teams are going to approach Lamar Jackson and talk about this, because nobody's going to give him a fully guaranteed deal. That appears to be the case at the moment. And if that's not going to happen, what incentive would teams have to negotiate with Lamar just for the Ravens to be like, oh, yeah, we like that number. Yeah, we'll do that. You're here in Baltimore.
Did you talk about the number of teams that, like, either through their own reporting or even, like, the Falcons retweeting Diana Rossini?
Yeah, taking themselves out of the running. Yes, we talked about it a lot.
What the hell is that?
Yeah.
And what was the conclusion that you guys drew?
Well,
sorry, I'm catching up on a week worth of show.
Yeah,
this is like the segment that we do to make sure that I didn't miss anything in sports last week that's going to factor into our conversations moving forward.
So the word collusion starts getting thrown around, right? Of owners getting together and we don't want no more fully guaranteed contracts for quarterbacks. So we're out. But I don't know. I have a hard time. With that. Like, can it be true that these owners want Deshaun Watson to be the outlier and all are on the same page with that without having to get together and collude and say, here's when we're going to come out with this? Also,
they don't have to get together.
When Deshaun Watson got that fully guaranteed contract, the levee broke. There are going to be fully guaranteed contracts for quarterbacks very, very soon. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, those guys are going to get paid at some point. I have a hard time believing Deshaun Watson will be the last fully guaranteed contract we ever see for a quarterback in the NFL.
Oh, I disagree. I think if you can get ownership to put down their foot on a former MVP, a 25-year-old former NFL MVP, and say, no, we are not doing guaranteed contracts moving forward, I think it's highly unlikely. In fact, it was a really interesting conversation. I was catching up on some stuff because I had a lot of travel this weekend, or over the course of this week, both by plane and by shuttle, which was an experience in 14 inches of snow. Let me tell you. But I was listening to the Kirk Cousins interview that Lawan and Compton did on Bussin' with the Boys. Kirk Cousins, who prior to that, I don't think there had been a fully guaranteed NFL contract prior to Kirk Cousins' initial 3-year deal with the Minnesota Vikings when they double franchise tagged him in Washington and let that thing play out to where he ultimately got the fully guaranteed, I think it was 3 years, 84 from Minnesota, and how he was in a unique situation. Deshaun was also in a unique situation where these teams were bidding on him, and Cleveland had to go to the max, go above and beyond, do things that were unprecedented to get Deshaun to reconsider them. Because if you'll remember, Deshaun Watson had initially told the Cleveland Browns no, based on the reporting around that. So they did the thing that nobody does. They gave him the guaranteed contract. They gave him enough money to where he could not say no. I mean, I don't want to say that it'll never happen again because we have 2 previous incidents of this, but I don't think that it's going to happen as quickly as Burrow or who was the other name that you mentioned?
Herbert.
Jalen Hurts? I mean, like,
I think if this was Joe Burrow in this scenario, being able to talk to other teams, talk to whatever teams he wants, he would have a fully guaranteed deal by the end of the offseason.
Well, what do you think's happening there? Why do you believe Joe Burrow to be that substantially better than Lamar Jackson?
No, I just think the circumstances are different. His style of play, I think teams would look at him as having more longevity than Lamar Jackson.
I don't disagree with that.
He hasn't been as injured as Lamar Jackson. And the circumstances, again, of negotiating a contract and going through all that legwork just for the possibility in the end for the Ravens to say, yeah, okay, we'll do that. And then just you do the work for them, I think goes against Lamar Jackson. But if this was Joe Burrow, I think Burrow would have a fully. I think teams would, yes, oh my God, yes, to take whatever you want, yes.
Huh. Now I mean we have no idea because that's not the circumstance for Joe Burrow right now. But I do think it's a pretty interesting parallel to consider given that both of them play in the same division and they're right around the same age. In fact, is Burrow? Oh, I think Burrow's older than Lamar at this point. I think Burrow might be 2 years older than Lamar.
Oh, I don't know about that.
You would be surprised. I bet Joe Burrow's 27.
He is 26.
Joe Burrow's 26?
He turned 26 in December.
How old's Lamar?
I believe Lamar is 26.
Let me double check. Lamar is also 26. I lied to you. I'm sorry.
Who is holding more up? Yeah, Lamar just turned 20. They're actually very close in age. Who's holding more up in all of this, Lamar or Aaron Rodgers? When you think about
Rodgers. Like
there are players on his own team, like Alan Lazard. Poor Alan Lazard is like, I would like to know if you were going to be my quarterback so I can figure out where the hell I'm going to play next year as a free agent.
I mean, well, this is what he did to DeAndre Hopkins. Or no, I'm sorry, not DeAndre Hopkins.
Devontae Adams.
Devontae Adams.
And then he lost him because of it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They went the season without Devontae Adams because he screwed around too long and they made Green Bay wait to do the Devontae Adams deal until they figured out what the hell they were doing at quarterback. And Devontae Adams was like, this is all fine and good, but like I kind of like Vegas a little more than Green Bay, and I'm good with Derek Carr. We're buddies. Let's ride. Now that blew up in their face too, but I think that I don't think there's any disputing Aaron Rodgers is holding things up in the NFL more than Lamar Jackson because Lamar Jackson right now, Lamar Jackson is open for business for all 32. Any team can move this forward at any given point. There are only 2 teams involved right now with Aaron Rodgers. It's the Packers and it's the Jets. And that having so much more of a ripple effect across the league than Lamar Jackson right now, I think that tells you everything you need to know. Because we're talking about still 8 quarterback jobs that are up for grabs, even if you don't factor into consideration Baltimore and Lamar. And that removes teams like Tennessee, who it's not certain what the Titans are going to do at quarterback moving forward. But I think 8 discernibly jobs are open right now at this point. And I think that Lamar's circumstance is very, very – I think it's just different than Rodgers as far as how much more attention Rodgers is garnering and who is in control of the situation. Lamar is ultimately in control of what deal he says yes or no to.
So sick of this with Rodgers. It's just every sign in the situation is pointing to, he's going to play for the Jets. Nathaniel Hackett is there. They have the money to do it. The meetings went well. The Packers are already talking like they've moved on. Just do it, man. What's with this holdup? This is getting ridiculous.
Well, there will be time to talk about it. This week is going to be filled with NFL transactions, many more that we will have time to discuss. There was a deal done yesterday, though, that directly impacts the Titans negotiations with Jeffery Simmons. We'll give you some details on that, what clarity we now have on what a big Jeff deal might look like. We'll do that coming up next. 615-737-1045 is how you join the conversation. If you would like to, what do you think a deal should look like for Jeffery Simmons? I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. Flying fast and furiously. Welcome back to the show. Told you we got some little more clarity on what a Jeff Simmons contract will look like, but first let's get you updated on everything that's flying around. We'll try to do the best we can with all of this stuff at this point. From Adam Schefter about 9 minutes ago, with the when the negotiating window for free agency opens in under an hour, the Texans and Raiders are expected to pursue former 49ers quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo. Per league sources, Jets could also get in, but as Lucas so frustratingly noted, they're in wait-and-see mode right now because one guy's holding the league hostage. Texans, we'll talk about the number one overall pick in a little bit because I was out. I think you guys were off the air by the time the Panthers and Bears did that deal. But the Jimmy Garoppolo situation is going to matter for a lot of different teams, and given the implications of Carolina getting up to number one overall, I think it bangs a lot of teams that were in this quarterback draft. So now you have the Texans exploring options. Texans were probably going to explore options anyway. Probably need three quarterbacks on the roster. Do need three quarterbacks on the roster, at least heading into training camp, and then they can make whatever decision they want on Davis Mills and his future with the Texans. But that is something to keep in mind and something we'll dive into in a little more detail later on. Then there is this note also, or rather from Mike Garafolo of the NFL Network. The Falcons have agreed to terms on a 5-year, $105 million extension with guard Chris Lindstrom. Chris Lindstrom, for those of you who have been paying attention to free agency, is the best, or was the best, potentially available offensive lineman in the NFL. And I want you to remember this when you're considering paying a free agent offensive lineman, whatever their market value ends up being, if you are paying them to be a starter. The best guys don't hit the market. They don't end up available. So if you're looking at Orlando Brown at left tackle, who the Chiefs decided they weren't going to franchise tag again, we'll see what happens with him. He's not considered the best at his position. He's good enough to win a Super Bowl, though. If you're going to reset the market with him, you may think twice about that before you end up committing that kind of financial resource to a player at a premium position. Because if their teams are willing to let them walk, they've either won a Super Bowl in ways that make the finances difficult, because a lot of players off Super Bowl teams end up getting paid, or their club does not consider them to be worth the value that the market says they are, and they're allowed to let walk. It's what happened with Jack Conklin a couple of years ago, and you can debate the merits of that. Certainly the Titans have not been better at right tackle since Jack Conklin left. But two deals to keep in mind, or two situations to monitor at this point. Then there's the contract that came down yesterday for Daron Payne. So Daron Payne, for those of you unfamiliar, is a very, very good interior defensive lineman for the Washington Commander football skins team. He was the first player tagged in the franchise tag cycle, and he also became the first of those players to get a new deal done. It's 4 years, $90 million, and it makes him the second highest paid interior defensive lineman in total value, behind only Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald's making $30 million a year. Now, Daron Payne had a great performance in a contract year. If you want to look at it statistically, he's a good overall player, but he had 11.5 sacks last year. Washington has a really, really good front, set him up well. Jeff Simmons, though, is obviously the thing that Titans fans are focused first and foremost on, and now we know what the floor should be for a Jeffery Simmons deal. He's going to get more than 4 years, $90 million. He's worth more than $90 million across 4 years at this point. That's an average, by the way, of 22.5 for those of you doing the math at home. Jeff is going to end up, I think, being somewhere between 24 and 26 based on that market value. He didn't have as good a season last year as Daron Payne did. That does matter, and that'll be held against him in negotiations. But the thing that Jeff has, and something that him and his representation should be banging the drum on. One, he's an incredibly disruptive player. He is a player at a premium position right now with the skill set that teams value above almost anything but quarterback. And he played basically the entire second half of the season on a bum ankle and finished, I think, started all but one game in 2022. So Jeff, sacrificing himself to try and stay on the field and help his team win games. His production did take a dip. Forgive me, Jeff missed 2 games in 2022, 15 of a possible 17. He had 7.5 sacks. He forced 1 fumble. He had 7 passes defensed, which was a career high. He was all over the place, but we did notice how much less effective he was, for obvious reasons, when the ankle situation came out. Now, what ends up happening with Jeff, how long it takes, the Titans have cleared enough money to make this thing go. And, they could have done it with a lesser cap hit in 2023 and structured a deal however they wanted to make it financially reasonable, depending on how much the guaranteed money is and what Jeff's preferences are. But they can do it with relative ease now, because after releasing Ben Jones, and whenever they make the Bud Dupree release official, which is reportedly expected to happen this week, they'll be ballpark $40 million, which is a much different discussion than we were having around them when they made those 4 initial cuts, ended up with 12, which was really 8 in effective cap space. They're dealing with about $40 million at this point, so they can get Jeff done and then some.
Got to keep your eye on Quinnen Williams in this too.
Well, that's the other thing. Now you're not just negotiating with Jeff, but you're competing against the clock, which is the same thing. It's the same thing for players at any position, right? Christian Kirk upturned the wide receiver market last year, and then everybody started scrambling to get their respective wide receiver deals done.
Yeah, but Williams is talked about up there in a similar vein to the way Jeff is talked about down here.
I think
and he was more available and more productive
thus far.
This past
Quinnen
season.
Williams, I think when you look at the body of work, I think Quinnen Williams has overall been a more productive player than Jeff individually. I'm not saying that Jeff doesn't matter a great deal. I'm not saying that Jeff is not an incredible player at his position. Quinnen Williams has just been able to do more. He's just been on terrible teams. Just been terrible teams. And this year was really kind of a breakthrough season for Quinnen Williams. Now, looking at Quinnen, just quickly, overall production standpoint, Jeff has 21 sacks across his 4 NFL seasons thus far. Call it 4.5 because obviously he missed a good deal of his rookie season and didn't come into play until the end of October. Quinnen Williams across the same time span.
3.5.
3.5, I'm sorry. 3.5, this is why math is hard. 27.5 sacks for Quinnen Williams, who played in 13 games his rookie year, 13 games his second year, 15 and 16 respectively. So he hasn't played a full NFL season. Jeff has played 1 full NFL season, which was 2021. So we now at least have the structure, an idea of the structure for Quinnen Williams and Jeffery Simmons. Fair to expect that those 2 players will command more from their 2 teams as they try and negotiate extensions for their first-round picks. 615-737-1045. The Panthers have traded up for the number 1 overall pick. They traded with the Chicago Bears to get that deal done. We'll tell you why it impacts the Titans so much coming up next.
It is 11:01. Good morning from the Superbook.com sports desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. The legal tampering period starts today in the NFL with free agency officially starting on Wednesday. One trade that just came down, the New England Patriots are trading former Titans tight end Jonnu Smith to the Atlanta Falcons. That's according to Ian Rappaport. Smith reunited with his former offensive coordinator in Tennessee, Arthur Smith. Yesterday, the Miami Dolphins traded for Rams cornerback Jalen Ramsey, sending LA a third-rounder and tight end Hunter Long. The Washington Commanders signed defensive tackle Daron Payne, 4 years, worth $90 million, with $60 million of it in guaranteed money. Conference tournaments wrapped up on Sunday, and the NCAA tournament bracket is out. Houston, Kansas, Purdue, and Alabama are the one seeds. Bama coming off an SEC tournament championship in Nashville over the weekend. Tennessee, the 4 seed in the East. They take on 13 seed Louisiana Thursday night. 8 SEC teams got in. Vanderbilt, not one of them, after falling to Texas A&M in the SEC tournament semifinals. The Nashville Predators have won back-to-back games via shootout on the West Coast last night. It was at the Anaheim Ducks. Preds now 5 points out of a playoff spot in the West. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second down on this Monday. Welcome in. Welcome back if you're just now joining us. We're happy to have you either way, no matter how you're listening. Jump in at any point, 615-737-1045. You're welcome to do so. Lucas and I are here with you to navigate the NFL's free agency period, which we have some kind of celebration sound, officially opened at 11 a.m. this morning.
Not yes, hell yes.
I'm about to snort it for the next week. All the NFL transactional news. I know you are too, and be interesting to see where the Titans decide to allocate their newly acquired resources. Let's, before we get into that, there's a couple of things that are going to impact this free agency market. One of those things is the idea that the Carolina Panthers on Friday traded up with the Chicago Bears to take the number 1 overall pick off their hands. They sent, for number 1 overall in 2023, they sent Chicago their first and second round picks. That's 9 and 61, a 2024 first rounder, a 2025 second rounder, and who many would consider a number 1 wide receiver in DJ Moore. That is basically what the Bears have been looking for, and it does reiterate their commitment to Justin Fields as a quarterback. But I think the Carolina thing is so fascinating because the ripple effect that it creates. Now, there's 2 different ripple effects that it creates. We're going to start with the first one before we talk about the AFC South implications later. But Carolina going up to get number 1 and a quarterback causes a lot of teams a lot of different problems and very much impacts this free agency market. I don't know if the Texans would have been in on Jimmy Garoppolo prior to them being leapfrogged by Carolina, who was at 9 initially and was probably going to take a quarterback anyway.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that.
Okay,
I
explain.
could easily see the Texans still being in on Jimmy Garoppolo either way. How much of an impact does it really have when, if you're Houston, you still have the number 2 pick? If not your number 1 guy, you're still going to have a pick of the top 2 prospects at quarterback in this draft.
Well,
and you're still going to want a stopgap for that rookie quarterback.
We'll talk about Houston a little later on. We'll have a larger AFC South conversation. But I do think it impacts quarterback free agency a great deal. Now, winners and losers, you can do those things if you want to. I do think that it is notable for Justin Fields that it is a reiteration. They could have moved Justin Fields as a part of trading away the number 1 overall pick if they wanted to for a team that was looking at a quarterback situation. I personally, selfishly, I'm excited to see Justin Fields get support. They have a lot more work to do on the offensive line, but now they have Darnell Mooney. They have Chase Claypool, I think, under contract. Cole Kmet is the tight end there, who's been a solid player. And now you add what is a number one wide receiver in DJ Moore to try and get this guy a little bit more help and hopefully upgrade his protection. I think that's notable. I do think that it makes. Do you remember what they traded away for Chase Claypool? Because that was a bad deal.
I don't.
So it wasn't a good deal at the time. It makes even less sense now because we were about halfway through the season when the Bears traded with the Steelers to get Chase Claypool. Now, he's had back-to-back disappointing seasons. But looking at the compensation that they gave up, 32, it's the first of the second round picks this year. So they gave away what is essentially a first-round pick because there are only 31 picks in the draft for Chase Claypool.
In the first round of the draft, yeah.
Right. So Chase Claypool, that deal looks even worse because he's a free agent. Or I'm sorry, he is in a contract year. So they traded for a season and a half of Chase Claypool, number 32 overall. That's kind of gross.
Yeah, that doesn't look good right now.
Because Darnell Mooney is also in a contract year. I think Kmet is too. Like, they've got all three of those guys on expiring contracts. So somebody's the odd man out there, one would think. I also think it's notable. Do you know how many different quarterbacks Carolina has had since
Cam?
Since, let's say, yeah, since Cam is
since
probably.
Cam Newton.
Yeah,
he was
Cam.
a franchise quarterback, MVP, got into the Super Bowl.
I was trying to figure out how long that's been. I think it's been, well, Cam had like a weird stint on the roster 2 years ago.
Yeah,
right?
so that's the funny thing. He is one of those quarterbacks. Yeah. Cam is one of the quarterbacks they've had since Cam.
Well, there's Cam, and then there's Washed Cam, and we saw Washed Cam at the end of his career. Now, they have a situation where it's not just that Carolina has cycled through a bunch of quarterbacks. Frank Reich has had a bunch of quarterbacks too. So they're looking for stabilization on both sides, the head coach and the organization. The Colts with Reich, he got Andrew Luck, had a career year with Reich, then retired. Then they go Jake Brisket, Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, and Matt Ryan.
Yeah, so you can see why from Frank Reich's perspective, like, no, we're getting our guy right now. Right now, and he's going to be our guy forever.
You don't understand how badly it went. They fired me for a guy whose last name was the biggest promoting point around him because he had not lost a game on his namesake on Saturday until he got dummied on a Saturday.
But the Panthers get it too because they've been through the same thing since Cam, 2015, the last time Cam Newton played? 15-16 for the Panthers. But I can name, how many starters can we name?
Baker,
Darnold,
P.J. Washington.
Ah, yes. Washed Cam. That's 4. Kyle Allen.
Kyle Allen is in there. Kyle Allen, defeater of the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
I want to say there was another former Ron Rivera backup quarterback in there that made a start. What does this mean for Ole Miss quarterback Matt Corral? They traded up to get Matt Corral, and then they fired Matt Rule.
He's still on the roster.
Yeah, but
could be a backup option if he shows something.
Well, sure, a backup option, but they traded up to get this guy, and that removes any possibility for Matt Corral that he'll be the future of Carolina. They have dealt with a fair amount of moving parts at this point, but man, Carolina's not a great place for a quarterback to land right now, especially when you've given away DJ Moore. They do have good pieces on the offensive line. Taylor Moton at right tackle. They drafted Ike Ekwonu out of NC State, who had not a great first year on the left side, but I think it's fair to expect there needs to be a learning curve associated with any rookie offensive lineman. And Ike is a super talented player who I think can figure it out.
I mean, there's not much by way of weapons.
That's what I'm saying. Laviska Shenault, Terrace, not Terrence.
Terrace from LSU.
Terrace Marshall and Shai Smith. Ian Thomas and Tommy Tremble are the tight ends.
Yeah, it's a good O-line, a good run game. They'll be protected. They'll have a run game, and they just need to add receivers. I don't think it's as bad of a situation as you're going to find in Houston right now.
I think it's the worst skill position group in the league right now. Carolina.
As far as wide receiver, yeah, but they're not done. The wide receiver room as it looks today is not how it's going to look at the start of the season.
That's true.
There are worse situations. The offensive line is the biggest thing. They're going to be upright for the most part.
Well,
and I think you'll take that and understanding you can add receivers. The receivers are easier to find than a starting left tackle or a starting center.
Well, Cincinnati would disagree with you. But
That's true.
I mean, I'm just saying, it depends on. You could be right. It very much depends on what their team building philosophy is. With the
and they still have picks,
with the Panthers. What is their picks? What is their compensation situation? Because they gave away 4 draft picks over the course of the next 3 drafts and DJ Moore.
Well, you know what the Panthers' biggest win in this is? They gave away. They had 2 second-round picks, and they gave away the 61st overall pick and kept the 39th overall pick. So with 2 picks, they gave away the later second-round pick. So they still have 6 picks: a first, a second, obviously the number 1 pick, a second, a third, a fourth, another fourth, and a fifth.
So we'll tell you the implications on the AFC South, or we'll talk about the implications of the AFC South on the AFC South of this Panthers trade for the number 1 overall selection a little later on. What I am going to remind you of, though, is that 104.5 The Zone's Spring Golf Classic, presented by Ferguson HVAC, is coming up. It's April the 10th at Greystone Golf Club. There's only a few teams that remain, so purchase your team now before they are gone. To purchase, visit 1045thezone.com today. It's going to be a lot of fun out there at Greystone Golf Club. All 4 shows are going to be broadcasting, and we look forward to seeing many of you out there, so make sure you purchase your team sooner rather than later. A few more NFL free agency updates before we talk about the Titans cap situation. What happened?
Heineke. I'm getting texts from Robert about quarterbacks that we forgot about, of the quarterbacks that have started for the Panthers since Cam.
Heineke?
Taylor Heineke.
Taylor Heineke started for the Panthers?
Didn't he?
I don't remember that.
Teddy Bridgewater definitely did.
Teddy did.
Yeah.
Why is Robert texting you and not me?
Don't worry about it.
This is what happens when I leave for 3 days. It's just constant forming alliances against me.
Yeah, they claimed Heineke off waivers in April 2018, and he started against the Falcons.
PJ
Heineke
Washington. Did I say PJ Washington or did I say PJ Walker?
Oh, you might have said Washington, but I heard Walker.
PJ Washington is the NBA player.
Oh, I heard Walker in my head when you said that.
Okay,
but yeah,
somebody understood.
Heineke started 1 game for the Panthers in 2018.
Oh, my God, gross. Anyway, Panthers trying to figure it out. They seem to have done so with the number 1 overall pick, and they will advance as such. Later is when we'll talk about the implications on the AFC South. Meanwhile, let's talk about the Titans' current cap situation. They released a player on Friday who many of you love. We'll talk about what their priorities need to be and if that transaction, along with several others, has changed anything for Tennessee. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. So I think the best way to do this at this point is just to run down an updated list of transactions that are coming across. Welcome back to the show. We're going to talk about the Titans cap situation, their priorities, and what they should be now that free agency is not officially open, but teams are getting deals done in the legal tampering period. So a couple of things to note since we were last not in commercial break. Diana Rossini. The Tampa Bay Bucks have shown interest in both quarterback Baker Mayfield and Jacoby Brissett. Ian Rappaport saying the Patriots are expected to re-sign standout cornerback Jonathan Jones on a 2-year deal. Let's take a look at Adam Schefter, who says Chargers running back Austin Eckler is requesting permission to speak with other teams about a potential trade after preliminary talks with the team aimed at a contract extension did not progress, his agent told Cameron Weiss. And then the final one of these that has been coming across, at least in the immediate, the Bears are signing former Eagles linebacker TJ Edwards to a 3-year deal and are now targeting right tackle Mike McGlinchey, famously of the 49ers. So the Bears are spending, which we knew was going to be the case, and upgrading their offensive line is something that was going to be critical alongside with upgrading their skill position players. The Eckler thing is interesting. I think from a local standpoint, for the same reason that we mentioned Dalvin Cook potentially hurting Derrick Henry's market, any trade market for Derrick Henry that might exist. Austin Eckler wants a contract extension, so it's fair to expect that a team would have to pay him, whomever traded for him, and I would think that figure would be bigger than the $10 million cap hit, $10 million plus cap hit that a team would take on if they traded for Derrick Henry right now in his current contract situation on an expiring deal. Now, I know a lot of you will probably think that's good, that Derrick Henry's having his market diminished. I don't think it's ever a good thing when an asset that you have has its market diminished for whatever you might be trying to do. Even if, for all the reasons that you love Derrick Henry, understandably so, I don't think that's a good thing if you're a Titans fan right now and looking to try and do the quickest turnaround possible with a franchise that needs a lot of help at this stage. So now where are we with the Titans? You guys were on the air when I had the Ben Jones news, right?
We were, yes.
And what was the discussion around Ben Jones being officially released by the team?
Obviously not a surprise, right? None of the releases or reported releases so far have been a shock.
For Tennessee.
Right, for the Titans.
I thought the details on that were interesting because I don't know if you looked at the article.
That he chose to be released and not retire?
Yes, they offered him the option to retire as a Titan or be released, and Ben chose to be released. Now, I don't think that completely rules out retirement. I know Benny is on the lake for a couple of days with his family, get away for a little bit and try and take some time. So I don't expect him to be right in the middle of free agency as it starts right now. But I think that part of it was surprising. I think most Titans fans would have looked at that and said, "Oh well, if he didn't want to retire, couldn't you find a way to make a deal work in some way, shape, or form?" Because they only saved like a little over $3 million.
A 3.7. We talked about him as the best free agent signing John Robinson ever made.
He is that. He is absolutely that. Between he and Danico Autry, and Ben was obviously here for 7 seasons to Danico's so far. Danico's played 2 for the Titans, so obviously a substantial amount there. What was the cap difference between retire and release? I don't know. Did we ever figure out what this? I think that depends on how his contract was structured. I don't know that there was a substantially different figure, though.
Yeah, and if you're giving him the option to retire or be released, you would think
the money is the same.
money be the same.
Otherwise, I don't know that for sure, though. I don't want to tell people the wrong thing.
Yeah, otherwise it wouldn't make sense from a business standpoint to give that option if one saves significantly less money than the other, right?
Yeah.
If you're the Titans and you...
I would think so. Common sense would indicate so. I just don't know if there's I don't know what Ben's contract that he signed with the Titans looks like specifically, and if there's any kind of language in there that differentiates. But, without that being said, it's 3.7 either way. Now, it's not a ton of money, but it's enough money for a team that desperately needs it and is trying to find out a couple of different things. Zach Bunch on YouTube says, I don't get the Eckler thing. What the idea that he wants a trade, or the idea that hurts Derrick Henry's trade value? I'll give Zach some time to respond to that. Eckler, for what it's worth, is due $6.25 million in 2023, and that is he is entering the last year of his contract as well. So,
yeah, both Eckler and Cook would be more attractive and bring more value in a trade for a running back than Derrick Henry.
Yes, I agree. So keep an eye on that and any other running backs that are being discussed via trade while you're talking about the Derrick Henry situation and what makes the most sense for Tennessee. So we mentioned that Ben's release brings the Titans up a decent amount with their effective cap space. They are now in position with about $26 million as soon as the Bud Dupree deal is made official. Now, that still hasn't happened yet. And I don't know what the logic for Bud still being technically on the roster is. I don't think there's a trade market for Bud Dupree, but there's some stuff clearly that they're working through. They have gone from being 24 over the cap to now clear about $26 million under the cap, which gives them a lot of flexibility moving forward to try and get this thing right. Now, I think that as you look at the priorities heading into free agency, yes.
And the wait for Bud Dupree is due to his remaining guaranteed salary.
Okay, according to whom?
That was from Adam Schefter. Titans cannot release Bud Dupree until the start of the league year, which is in 2 days, due to his remaining guaranteed salary. But they plan to release him then.
Oh, okay. I've got it. So, that's been 2 weeks, though. Either way. So now, with the deal for the Titans, I don't think it changes their priorities in free agency. Priorities in free agency should still be veteran offensive lineman, veteran wide receiver, veteran pass catcher, let's say, because if they go out and get a tight end that has a proven track record of success and production, I'm not going to be mad at them. But I do think that the offensive line is still first and foremost the priority, because now you're talking about 3 spots almost certainly, 2 spots who are now open officially, and many people are texting me about the Bud guaranteed money thing, so thank you for that. I'm sorry, I must have missed that over the course of the last couple of days. But offensive line, still very much the priority. Center, a new center for Ryan Tannehill, a new presence in the locker room, whether that's a vet, whether they draft a rookie, whatever the case may be.
Or neither of those things. Maybe their center in 2023 was on the roster last season.
Brewer,
or Corey Levin.
That's I'd be curious about Corey. I don't know what Corey's contract status is. I think Brewer is favored, though, over Levin. But that was under a different offensive line coach, so we'll see what Jason Hoteling thinks.
But you're talking about overhauling essentially the entirety of the O-line, right? We officially now 4 of the Titans' 5 starters from last season are not members of the Tennessee Titans, correct?
Yes, and I would say to you that this overhaul is not just a one-season thing, but it's going to take them a couple of draft and free agency periods to probably get to the spot where they want to be.
Exactly.
But this is the first iteration of that.
So you're having to compromise somewhere in the short term.
Oh, no, there's going to be compromises made on this roster.
And so I wouldn't be surprised if that's one of them, Brewer or Levin, as your center in 2023.
It's just a tough position to deal with any kind of compromise.
Sure.
Now,
they both have experience there.
You could, depending on what happens, you could play Brewer or Levin. You can play them both, theoretically. You could play Brewer or Levin. I thought Jordan Ruse did well down the stretch to kind of acquit himself. I don't know that makes him a starting offensive lineman, but I certainly think it makes him a factor in the discussion as far as playing either guard position or simply as depth. Then I think you can still play Brewer or Levin at center, draft a center, maybe not a day 1 center, maybe not a day 2 center, but draft a center behind whomever you're moving forward immediately with, and give that player a little more time to kind of get into position, get into the swing of things before you have to move on from either Brewer or Levin.
Robert just sent this to us in the Twitter group that the Bucs are exploring trade possibilities with guard Shaq Mason. He has a $9.6 million cap hit. Obviously, the connection with him is local. From the area, went to Columbia Central High School.
Won a Super Bowl, multiple Super
With the
Bowls
Patriots.
with the Patriots. I don't remember how many.
I can't remember how
He
many.
was a good player for the because he's not a big guy. Like he's a fairly undersized player at the guard position. Was he hurt last year?
He is 29. He will be 30 at the start of this coming season. I'm not sure about his injury history from this past season.
I just didn't know if he was a part. Forgive me, I don't know much about the Bucs offensive line other than it was super hurt and super bad last season, so I don't know how much football Shaq Mason played. Either way, there is going to be a circumstance. It doesn't look like they're going to re-sign Nate Davis. What that means for David Long, I'm not certain yet, but I think David Long is more likely than Nate Davis because Nate is going to command, I think, in the double digits as far as millions of dollars are concerned on an annual average salary, and I don't know that that's the best allotment or the best way for this team to distribute their funds right now. Compromises are going to have to be made at a couple of different positions this year. Which positions those are remains to be seen. We know that they have about $26 million in cap space. We know that they have 7 starting jobs that are open across the team at this stage, and we know that it goes beyond the starters, that it also speaks to a depth issue that this team was not able to survive the amount of attrition that they've had in the last 2 seasons. Now, I don't know that anybody would dispute offensive line being the biggest priority in free agency, but here's what I would say. Their personnel priorities start and end with their starting 5. But because of what we've already talked about with the deal that Atlanta gave, I'm blanking on the guard's name, Lindstrom, earlier today, just about an hour ago, the best offensive linemen don't hit free agency. So you have to take into consideration, am I going to spend and try and plug in holes with a free agency crop that you know is going to be less than, that's going to get overpaid just by nature of what the market is? Do I plug and play with things like Donovan Smith, who was a cap casualty at the left tackle spot in Tampa Bay, played through a significant amount of injury, isn't a bad player, isn't a great player? How much is that going to cost, and can you do it on a rental deal? These are the kind of discussions that will have to be had. I would almost say prioritize the veteran pass catcher, tight end or wide receiver, in free agency over the offensive lineman because how easy it's going to be to overspend on offensive line. Doesn't mean you can't get depth guys. They need to be bigger contributors than Jamarco Jones or Dennis Daly. But that's kind of my view on free agency right now, even as we know, and we continue to know, that the biggest issue with this team is what they have up front. So that's kind of the prism that I'm running their free agency preferences through, or at least my free agency preferences through. Mark Webb says of Shaq Mason is 311 pounds, Buck. That's not undersized considering Brewer is 290. I think giving Aaron Brewer 290 might be a bit generous at this point. Lawan's 271 right now. I'm fascinated to see. I know he doesn't play for the Titans anymore. I'm fascinated to see what his free agent market is.
So what would be more likely for the Titans to address first, tight end or wide receiver through free agency, I should say?
First, well, let's look at some names that are available at the tight end spot.
The tight end names are interesting.
Well, and as is the draft, which is far more cost effective. So I think because of that, my personal opinion, not being grounded in any reporting or anything like this, but I think my personal opinion would be that the wide receiver market would lend itself more to a reliable veteran option, which, by the way, was for the Houston Texans, Robert Woods, a deal that I did not get to talk about, but one that I found laugh out loud funny while I was on vacation last week. By the way, Ravens just released Calais Campbell. So there will be more of those coming down the line. Now, tight ends in free agency at this point, to kind of take a look at what this team could be trying to acquire, and we'll keep it to the unrestricted free agents right now because anything other than that would get complicated. Now, you know one of them, Austin Hooper. Mike Gesicki for the Dolphins.
Not happening.
Because he doesn't block. Dalton, you got out there very quickly.
He was, I believe, was he the most productive tight end on that list, or was Schultz?
I would have to look up
It
the
might have been
statistics.
Schultz.
It might have been Gesicki only because he played one more game than Dalton Schultz. No, it's got it right here. Okay, so, well, that can't be right.
What?
Mike Gesicki had more than 28 receptions last year, didn't he? They've got the same amount of touchdowns, but it's saying that Gesicki has 28 receptions last year.
He had 32, and maybe that's included.
What the hell?
I can pull up his. So that, I think he really came on late in the season as well.
Well, they couldn't figure out how to use him because the tight end in a 49ers type offense, like what it is that Mike McDaniel runs, requires the tight end to block. Like it just wasn't a fit. So I don't know if he wasn't on the field.
32 catches, 362 yards, and 5 touchdowns in 17 games.
He played less snaps.
That's that's Pro Football Reference.
He played less snaps last year than Austin Hooper did. He had less receptions. He had less yards.
Than Hooper?
And 3 more touchdowns.
What did Hooper have?
I'm looking right now, 491 snaps, 41 receptions, 444 yards. 2 touchdowns to go with that to Gesicki's 5. So Dalton Schultz, I think, would be considered. Dalton Schultz or...
I think Hayden Hurst might be the most intriguing name on there.
He's one of the older ones.
I think he might be the most cost-effective one and potentially the better fit.
He's older than Jeff Swaim, which I find interesting.
And much more of a pass-catching threat.
Don't knock Jeff Swaim like that. You may get Jeff Swaim back. You talking smack about Jeff Swaim, he may end up back on this roster. Hold your tongue.
I think Blaine got me on the Hayden Hurst train because Blaine was fawning over the way Hurst pancaked Bud Dupree on one particular play against the Titans.
Well, no, hey, Hayden Hurst does that. And he was on a rental deal for Cincinnati. I don't know if you'd be willing to do another one because he had a fairly productive season last year. Played 13 games, 52 catches, 414 yards,
Hurst?
2 touchdowns. Yes.
And it was cost of, I think, $3.5 million was his 1-year deal last year.
$3.5 million. He made
cheaper than Hooper.
He made $2.5 million less than Austin Hooper did last year. The other two, Gesicki and Dalton Schultz, were playing for north of $10 million. Where both of those players must have been tagged for $10.931. They had the same contract value, so I assume those were franchise tags. Either way, I think that the more cost-effective options. Now, I think you can sign a tight end. I don't think it has to be a starting tight end. Or if you find a blocking tight end that's more acquirable, if that's even a word, with your draft situation, because 11 overall, one would assume that they would have the option to draft a tight end at 11. I don't think 3 guys or 4 guys are going to go before. I mean, they would have a great many options at 11. It's just a matter of who's worth the first-round draft pick. I would think still that my attention would be turned to lower level, middle tier, wide receiver free agency is the thing that probably takes precedent in the free agency period for this team. Or maybe pass rush. Pass rush is something that we're not really talking about, or at least we haven't, because of Bud's situation. But they need another option alongside Harold. I'd be shocked to see them pay somebody the way that they did with Bud before they did the deal with Harold, because I think they got to get cheaper there. But damn, it's a tough spot. All right, let's pivot back to a little bit of March Madness. The Vols, their official seeding as a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, and what happened with Vanderbilt getting snubbed. We'll talk about that coming up next before we pivot back to some free agency discussion. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
35. Oh, yeah. And they'll be contenders again. That's a good poll question for some point this week. Which 4 seed is most likely to be upset in the first round? Tennessee, UConn, Indiana, or who did you say was the other one? Virginia, UVA. Who can score? The Dins. They have their jerseys that just say apostrophe DINS. Love that.
Actually, that's the matchup I was hoping Indiana would have. Indiana Furman. Indiana has Drake, Indiana has Kent State.
Yeah, Drake, who Greg Sage from Belmont has been texting me like, "Hey, pick Drake in your brackets."
Pick Drake. Well,
Drake could do something.
Nobody would know better than. By the way, Casey Alexander, Belmont men's basketball coach, is going to be our tournament analyst again this year. Unfortunate that Belmont did not get in, which means Casey's stuck with us for another year. As soon should be the greatest motivation of all. Just make the damn tournament, and we'll stop asking you on the radio show.
We'd still ask.
We probably would. No, we would definitely ask if they made the tournament. But we were grateful for Coach Alexander's insights and analysis, and we'll figure out what day we're going to have him on later in the week. So Indiana, Kent State, and then UConn VCU is UConn Iona.
Rick Pitino.
I keep reading this damn bracket wrong. Rick Pitino back in the tournament is just so much. I don't know which one of those 4 would most likely to be upset.
I think any of the 4 could be upset in this first game.
I don't want to speak from ignorance because I haven't seen Louisiana Lafayette play this season. Just flatly haven't, even though they did win their conference as Sun Belt champions. So they clearly have potential. But, I mean, just Tennessee. It's hard for me to pick Tennessee in anything right now, basketball-wise.
Louisiana Lafayette is the rare Sun Belt school with a former McDonald's All-American on there.
So when I was watching the selection show last night, and when I saw that Vanderbilt wasn't even a part of the last 4 in, a thought crossed my mind, and I wonder how this would hit the two of you. Okay, at this point, I would rather watch Vanderbilt play postseason basketball than watch Tennessee. And it's not because Tennessee hasn't earned their spot. They've had struggles down the stretch. They've lost 6 of their last 10 games at this point. We know that there are injuries. A guy Ziegler tearing his ACL. Vanderbilt also has injuries with their best player. But just something about watching Vandy in the last month versus watching Tennessee in the last month, I was really hoping to see Vandy in this NCAA tournament. I don't know that that's – I'm not trying to be unfair. I'm not trying to slight Vols fans or the Vols basketball program. I'm grateful to have them in the tournament, so it gives us to talk about something locally with postseason college basketball implications. But Vanderbilt at this point, I felt like they had so much more juice when they're on the court. And maybe it's because the Tennessee experience has been so much the same in the last 10 games that it's just kind of wearing on me. But I really would rather have seen Vanderbilt in this tournament if I'd had a choice over Tennessee, or rather would watch Vanderbilt over Tennessee at this point, just because I know what I'm getting every time they're out there, and it doesn't seem to be changing. They didn't get enough opportunities to play more games in the SEC tournament to figure out life without Zakai Ziegler because they got bounced.
Are you saying you know what you're getting with Tennessee? Because I think that the problem with Tennessee is you don't know what you're getting.
Well, I know what I'm getting on the offensive side that is not going to be sufficient if they falter defensively the way that they have done a couple of times, specifically against Missouri. So like Lucas said to open the show, I don't know what Missouri has figured out against the University of Tennessee, but they seem to be the plague.
Well, that's the irony of it is offense hasn't exactly been the issue for Tennessee. Now, there have been some situational circumstances like the last 5 minutes of the Auburn game where they can't knock down a field goal, but when this team is scoring 70 or more points, you feel good about its chances to win with its defensive resume. All season long, that's been the case for Tennessee. If they could get to 70, 75, you feel pretty good. But lately, it's been on the defensive end. 79-71 loss against Mizzou. 70-55 win over Ole Miss. 79-70 loss against Auburn. 75-57 win against Arkansas. And you did lose 68-63 at Texas A&M. But since the Ziegler injury, which took place in the Arkansas game, Tennessee's put up 70 or more points in every game. They're finding ways to score the ball. Josiah Jordan-James fell off the face of the earth against Mizzou. That was a problem.
Yeah.
20 points, 7 rebounds against Ole Miss, and then turns around, goes 1 for 7 against Missouri. That type of stuff can't happen from your veterans. You need your veterans, your seniors to score, and then for somebody else, a Tyreek Key, a Jemai Meshack, to have a performance to complement it. Meshack showed up against Missouri.
He had 14.
And he's coming into his own a little bit on offense. But honestly, I would just push back on you and say that the drop-off has now come defensively, that they haven't figured out that part of it without Zakai. They can manufacture points. It's not always pretty. But that's the consistencies on the defensive end of these last couple weeks, to me now, are what are concerning.
615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. We'll talk about the SEC and the tournament a little later on in the show. Meanwhile, let's get back to the trade. The Panthers trading up to the number 1 overall pick with the Chicago Bears. It has a tremendous amount of implications on the Tennessee Titans division, the AFC South. What does it mean? We'll tell you coming up next.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon from the Superbook.com Sports Desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. Legal tampering is officially open in the NFL with free agency technically starting on Wednesday, but deals are starting to take place. Some of the noteworthy news coming out: Jason Kelce will return to Philadelphia to play center. He is 35 years old. And a trade, as the New England Patriots reportedly will send former Titans tight end Jonnu Smith to the Atlanta Falcons, where he is reunited with his former offensive coordinator in Tennessee, Arthur Smith. Also, Los Angeles Charger running back Austin Eckler has requested permission to seek a trade after contract talks stall with the Chargers. The NCAA tournament bracket is out, and Tennessee is the 4 seed in the East region. They'll play 13 seed and Sunbelt champ Louisiana Thursday night. 8 SEC teams got in. Vanderbilt, not one of them, after falling to Texas A&M in the SEC tournament semifinals. Alabama is the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
It's a final hour already. It happened so fast. Either way, it's lovely to be back off vacation. Robert, Lucas, myself here with you until 1 o'clock. Jump in if you like, 615-737-1045. We got a lot to talk about. Trevor Sikkema of Pro Football Focus will be here in 18 minutes. Take a look at some of the free agency deals that are being done. Some updates on the quarterback situation, carousel around the league, and his thoughts on the Titans. A little mock draft Monday for you as well. Jameson on YouTube says he hears a wild Bert, or hears a Bert in the wild back there. I don't know what sounds he was making. Did you leave a microphone on during the commercial
I think
break?
when I flipped on my mic to do my update, so the stream audience doesn't hear the music and the imaging that comes through. They just hear me doing the update. And so when I flipped it on, Bert was just kind of chuckling off in the corner to himself, and I think he just heard a wild Bert in the distance.
What are you laughing about there that's so funny? What is tickling you today, Robert? What are you fighting with the microphone back there? What happened?
I wasn't ready yet. All right, listen.
We're 2 hours into the show. What do you mean you're not ready yet?
For the microphone to come around the corner. Yeah, stop it. Stop it. Every time you do this, me and Lucas are talking about the most improbable and impossible things that we should not be talking about on the radio. And you're like, what are you guys talking about back there?
He was picturing you skiing. That's what he was giggling about.
Yeah, in your sleep.
I'm an exceptional skier. I would dust the two of you.
Yeah, I'm sure if that was true, you would have put something on social media to show us how good of a skier you were. We saw nothing.
You're putting
of that.
everything else on social media.
We saw you were hanging out with a bunch of lodge bunnies. You weren't doing anything on the slopes,
well,
buddy.
I don't have the phone with me as I go down the ski.
Oh,
down the slopes.
I just don't believe you.
Yeah, how else is that St. Bernard with the barrel under his neck supposed to find you if you don't have a phone?
That is a good question. What was the purpose of the Saint Bernard with the whiskey
he had
around
liquor in the barrel underneath his neck, and it was supposed to wake you up and give you a little warmth.
What are you talking about?
You don't know anything about that Saint Bernard with the barrel under his neck? He comes and saves people in snowstorms?
No.
Oh, you've not seen that? It's like a cartoon thing.
Oh, yeah. Anytime you talk with me, Lucas, just know that it's some kind of a fiction thing I'm discussing. It's not something that actually happens. Like, I don't think St. Bernards really have like big ass barrels tied to their neck and they come down saving people.
Well, people are tweeting us that they need a ski trip update. In the same way that there's not ski footage. I didn't post footage of me on a stripper pole on my ski vacation, but that's something that happened too.
Boo.
Does everything have to be on social media for you?
I don't know. You tell
for you
me.
vermin?
You were on a stripper. Yeah, everything has to be social media for you. Yes, so that's why I'm surprised.
Everything
that's
but the
what you
stripper
do.
pole and the ski highlights. Now, it wasn't a stripper pole in a strip club. It was a stripper pole in the middle of the bar that I was being dared that I would not.
You danced on the stripper pole?
I absolutely did.
I am shocked that you did that without asking someone to get video for it for clout. That sounds nothing like you.
I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it at all.
The man who handed Kirby his phone said, Kirby, film me eating this piece of shrimp because I'm hungover. Did not give someone his phone when you got on a stripper pole.
And then told Kirby to turn the camera off.
Oh, I'll get the camera out of my face.
Well, that was because I was really going through it. I didn't want to throw up on the camera. That would not be a pleasant experience. But yes, some things don't necessarily make it there. But that's a thing that happened.
Well, that's good. I'm proud of you if that's the case.
For sure.
Of that you actually were able to have fun without showing everybody, look how much fun I'm having.
Honestly, it was so hard for me. Robert texted me or sent something to the message at some point.
Multiple times, by the way. I sent this multiple times.
Just screaming at me to stop working.
He would send a tweet out Ben Jones retiring. Let somebody else break it. You could have let me break that. Help me out.
I would love that.
You could have let. Why didn't you let me break it, man?
Can we do that one time? You just get any. It doesn't even have to be.
You want me to give Robert a story?
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be substantial. It could just be that the Titans will not bring back Nick Westbrook-Akina or something. You know what I mean?
What are you doing to NWI there?
I'm not trying
That's
to
wide receiver one.
I'm not trying to get NWI to catch a stray, but anything like that, and then just at Robbie Walsh or Robbie _ Walsh.
I just want to
reporting. Make Ian Rappaport aggregate it.
Is this kind of like what Pardon My Take did with the dog account? Pardon my take.
Leroy,
NFL Insider.
I guess that would be kind of stealing that from them.
I mean, it's sports radio. Everything's stolen.
Woof.
It's a copycat league.
All right. Nobody understood what either of you said because you're both talking over each other.
Send me down the ski slope. Oh!
That was actually the highlight of my skiing tour. That's what it sounded like. Only once did I eat it. I only went skiing one day. I was only up there for 3 days. It took me all day Wednesday to get up there and all day Saturday to get down. But we did have a great time, and it was honestly it's the first I know I did a little work, and we had the Ben Jones story, and I was peppering Lucas and Robert with guests that I wanted to have on this week at some point while I was in transit. But it was nice to have a vacation before all of this stuff goes crazy. Jameson says Adam Schefter retweeting Robert would be legendary.
By the way, Jarrett Stidham signing a 2-year, $10 million deal with the Broncos.
Okay. Buckethead says you were on a stripper pole trying to make a buck. It's true.
Move on.
You two have told way worse jokes than that.
Name one.
Subcar. Literally the last time I was on the radio show, you looking at me with conviction and saying in my response as Derek Carr is subcar being a thing that you needed to word vomit into a microphone. The most recent incident.
I had no choice.
And I wasn't here for 3 days. God knows what you did without me. Anyway, should we talk about the AFC South implications of the number 1 overall draft pick? Your phone calls are also welcome. 615-737-1045 is how you chime in. So the Panthers trade up and get number 1 overall from the Chicago Bears. They send 4 draft picks across 3 drafts and wide receiver DJ Moore to the Bears, who are trying to put things together around Justin Fields. Now, the implications of this are widespread. There's a variety of different players and teams that this impacts. I think that in particular, the AFC South is an affected party here, and more specifically, the Colts. I think the Colts, of all 3 AFC South teams that are quarterback questionable, shall we call them, Texans, Colts, Titans still up in the air, even though they at least have a starting player under contract. The Bears were, it seems, going to move out of this number 1 overall pick regardless of what happened. But when you see, there's a possibility that they could have moved down 1 spot and picked up Will Anderson or something like that because they also have pass rush needs. If the Cardinals kept their pick at 3, the Colts could have stayed put at 4 with only 1 quarterback off the board at that point, which would have allowed them to take their pick of all 3 of the remaining top-tier players that we talk about, whether that's Stroud, Young, Levis, Richardson. So now the Panthers are up there at 1. The Texans are 2. Both are likely drafting quarterbacks. It's entirely possible that by the time we get to the Colts at 4, that they're having to settle for a less than ideal quarterback situation, whether that's Levis as a developmental prospect or Richardson as a developmental prospect, because they're taking a quarterback either way. It would almost seem impossible for them not to. There's a 0% chance that they get their guy, though, at this point, unless they were content to draft Levis or Richardson at number 4, which would be shocking to me given all the other needs that they have. I don't think anybody's looking at those two as a finished product day one starter right now.
The pressure that's on Chris Ballard right now to get this right. If Chris Ballard's the one making the decision.
I mean, how down bad are you if Chris Ballard's the one making the decision is a funny throwaway line. But yes.
I mean, we have no idea.
No, I understand. Because, I mean, for the thing that Frank Reich got fired, recycling and repurposing veteran quarterbacks that didn't pan out, it looks like the Colts might have to do the exact same thing again.
And they could get leapfrogged. I mean, you think are the Cardinals not rubbing their hands together thinking about what they could get for that third pick for a QB? Cardinals don't need a quarterback.
Oh, no. Cardinals could absolutely. I mean, they could stick and pick and take the best defensive player. They could take. I mean, you could argue that Will Anderson's the best player in the class. But
it would make no sense for me for them to do that. Even if they're just moving back one spot, you can still get Will Anderson.
I mean, well, sure. If they have an offer for 3 and the team coming up to 3 needs the quarterback, like San Francisco did, and they can slow play it a little bit with Trey Lance, which is a thing. Trey Lance was. I think Trey Lance wasn't third.
I thought he was the third overall pick.
Okay, it's possible. You might, Robert or Lucas might fact check me on that. I can't remember exactly where San Francisco had to trade up. I know they gave up a substantial amount of capital to get there, though. It might have been third.
Yeah,
actually.
He was the third pick.
Okay, yeah. So maybe Arizona gets that offer. They get the Trey Lance offer, and they say, okay, we'll wait till 4.
I mean, are you not going to Seattle and Indy if you're Arizona and just dangling it? Like, come on. Come on.
Seattle is real. I mean, Seattle is the one that I think might actually do it because they've got the Broncos picks. They've got Geno under contract. They can slow play it with whoever they want to because Geno's on a 3-year deal. So I think at this point.
And then Indy doesn't get to choose their quarterback. Their quarterback is chosen for them.
I mean, they may not take a quarterback at that point. They may have to ride it out and try and do the thing that we've been talking about potentially the Titans doing, which is getting on the money on the Caleb Williams draft.
Oof. I don't know if Chris Ballard has that long.
No, he may not. But, I mean, his job what did Rand Carthon say at his introductory press conference? Quarterback gets people fired and hired all the time in this league. Chris Ballard may have, I mean, he's on his last leg in Indianapolis for a reason, but the thing that may ultimately cost him his job may completely be out of his control, which is crazy. 615-737-1045 is the number. Pops in Nashville up next. What's up, Pops?
Good morning. I've got breaking news.
Hit me with it.
I heard that the hotel you stayed at delivered an Easter basket to your room because you never got off the bunny slopes.
That's a good one-liner. It doesn't matter if I was on the bunny slopes, Pops. It matters that I got down off the mountain without tearing something, which was my initial fear, but thank you very much for the call. I would take the Easter basket, by the way. I deserve something for making it down the mountain in one piece. I'm convinced. Anyway, Trevor Sikkema of Pro Football Focus will join us. Coming up next, we'll talk about all of these different things, the Panthers trade, what it means for the Titans in the AFC South, a little bit of mock draft Monday with our guy, Trevor Sikkema, coming up next. All right, we got deals all over the place. We'll update more of those later on. Legal tampering well underway. But we got to talk about the NFL as a whole right now with our buddy Trevor Sikkema. Pro Football Focus is where you follow him. The NFL Stock Exchange is the podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review. My guy, how we living?
Oh, we're living large, man. There is no shortage of things to talk about this week, which is a beautiful thing in our business. So I'm doing good, my friend. Appreciate you having me.
Always a pleasure to have you on. I know you're busy. So let's start, though, with the thing that I think is going to impact a lot of free agency. The Panthers trading up for the number 1 overall pick. They send 4 draft picks across 3 NFL drafts and DJ Moore to the Bears, who seem to be reiterating their commitment to Justin Fields as their quarterback. What team do you think, or I guess what position do you think is most affected by the Panthers trading up for that number 1 overall pick in free agency at this point?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
Well, thank you, bud.
Are you saying like for the Panthers specifically, or any position for any team?
No, I'm saying like when you look at what the general needs are and the players that are available across any position at this point, understanding that Carolina's going up for a quarterback, how much do you, I guess quarterback is probably the market that we're most going to gravitate towards here, but how much do you think this shakes up the market at quarterback across the league right now?
Yeah, I mean, a lot, right? I mean, we're wondering what in the world is going to happen with Lamar Jackson, because it seems like there's some things going on behind the scenes where Lamar gets a non-exclusive tag, and then all of a sudden, every team that should be interested in Lamar Jackson comes out and says, no, we're not interested within minutes of the news dropping. I think that's a little bit fishy if you do ask me personally. But like the Lamar domino should have been a massive one when it comes to what teams are looking to do in this quarterback draft. But we've already seen news, coming out this morning with the tampering period of like, okay, where's Jimmy Garoppolo going to go? He's going to go to Baker Mayfield, Jacoby Brissett. Like, teams are talking about these different quarterbacks. And I think with Carolina making the move officially to get to number 1 overall, it doesn't necessarily change what we thought could happen in the draft, but it changes things for those teams that weren't able to get to number 1, because we were previously saying, okay, well, look at all the possibilities, right? The Titans at 11, the Panthers at 9, the Raiders at 7, the Colts at 4, the Texans at 2. All of these teams were teams that were looking for quarterback upgrades or quarterback changes one way or another that we potentially linked to number 1 overall. Well, okay, now the domino has fallen. There is only one team now that gets up there. So what about the other ones that were interested? Sure, the Arizona Cardinals do still have a pick and a solid spot there at number 3 overall for you to go get a quarterback. But again, there's only one team that's going to be able to get up to that spot. And there's just more teams that need a quarterback than there are answers in the draft. So I think that certainly with Carolina making that move, it's going to cause some teams to scramble a little bit. Well, maybe it's not scrambling. Maybe they came up with these contingency plans. I hope they did. But they're going to be maybe moving on to plan B and plan C already, or at least fortifying those options, because they can't just get left high and dry. And so that's where I think the trade to number 1 really affects the rest of the league.
Well, and I mean, at least locally, Trevor, we're looking at giant ripple effects in this division, the AFC South, not necessarily just for the Titans, but when you bring up the Colts and contingency plans, like Chris Ballard doesn't have many more contingency plans that he can rely on. If they end up having to go with another veteran quarterback, because theoretically they could get banged not just by Carolina trading up to number 1 overall, but Arizona could entice a team, whether that's Indy or Seattle, for example, to come up and try and take a quarterback at 3. The Colts situation seems to be the one most impacted from a detrimental standpoint, the way that I look at this.
Yeah, and it does. And look, I like Chris Ballard. I think that he's got a good head on his shoulders, but I think Chris Ballard is coming victim to the NFL being a really unpredictable league, because he has been the general manager for the Colts for a handful of years now. And I think that he has built a really nice core of the roster. Now, has it always played up to his potential? No, but that's also football. That's just kind of how it goes. I think that Ballard has been a man of principle for the entire tenure that he has been a general manager with the Colts, both in monetary value when it comes to the cap space and how much they're going to spend on certain positions, and also with draft capital, right? We saw last year they were rumored to be in on the Matthew Stafford trade, right? But they wouldn't really, now at least these are reports that I remember, they wouldn't dip into that first-round pick range. They wanted to get Matthew Stafford, but they were only saying, okay, well, our fair value for the trade says that we'll give you a day 2 pick and we'll take some of the money. Well, then all of a sudden you have a team in the Los Angeles Rams that goes, well, we'll pay you way more than that. And is what the Rams did a overvaluing of what should have happened? Yes, probably. But guess what happened, Buck? The Rams got Matthew Stafford and won a Super Bowl. So it's like, I think that that's where the Colts are right now. The Colts are, and especially with Chris Ballard, he's sitting here at number 4. All of us for so long were like, the Colts have to move up to number 1. They have to, because of this patient, maybe calculated game that they have played over the last couple of years. Now you have to overpay. You tried to do it the right way for a couple of years. Now you've got to overpay and make it happen. And they weren't able to do that. They got passed up once again. So I think that Ballard's got a really good understanding of value, of what his assets are worth. But the problem is that desperation and a lot of times ownership meddling in these franchises means that what guys go for at the very top are often overpays for what you think the value are. And I think that Chris Ballard has just been caught time and time again with having fair competitive offers, but not overpaying offers which actually get deals done. And once again, that's where I think the Indianapolis Colts are.
I was laughing. You're pretty good at the internet. I don't know if anybody's told you this lately, but you're pretty good at the internet. Trevor Sikkema at Tampa Bay Trey is where you can follow him. The "Enough with Aaron Rodgers" tweet with the meme of one of the gangsters from The Dark Knight who was screaming "Enough with the clown" during the mafia meeting in a scene in that movie made me laugh out loud. Who's holding the NFL more hostage from a news cycle standpoint right now? Aaron Rodgers or Lamar Jackson?
I mean, it's 100% Aaron Rodgers, and that's because we're going on 3 years now, right? And like that's ultimately why I think that Rodgers leaves. I think that Rodgers is not going to be in Green Bay next year. Now, as I'm saying that, I'm not looking at my Twitter timeline, so I'm sure Adam Schefter is going to tweet that he's returning to Green Bay, and I'm proven wrong live on the air. But the reason why I've long thought that he was going to be a Jet is because this is year 3 of it. And he signed the massive contract extension with the Green Bay Packers not too long ago. That should have been the moment. That should have been the moment where you go, okay, the deal is done. All of this is in the past. The only thing that we're debating from now on is, are you going to play for us or are you going to retire? And immediately, the very next offseason, here we are again. Oh, maybe he'll get traded. Maybe he'll retire. Maybe he'll come back. The Packers themselves, for as much as I want to say they need to put their foot down, of course, having a back-to-back MVP at quarterback changes everything. So it's not like they really have the power to say enough is enough. But it feels like Green Bay is just getting – it's almost like Green Bay might be at this point thinking, oh, God, thank God. Let's just get the deal done and move on with the team, not have to speculate this moving forward. And so ultimately I do think that he ends up somewhere else, which it looks like it's going to be the New York Jets. But that's the reason why, man. This guy has been holding the NFL hostage, Green Bay hostage, and the news cycle hostage for too many years now.
Are Titans fans justified in looking just about 4 hours south of here at Atlanta, looking longingly at Arthur Smith rebuilding the Titans, but, you know, at this point, a better version?
Yeah, I mean, let's be real, though. You know, they elevated Arthur Smith to offensive coordinator. They had him there at the OC spot. It's not like he was going to take over as head coach, right? The Titans had the 1 seed last year. Like, the Titans have had a lot of success. It's all just fallen off really quickly. And there are people out there that would say, oh, you could see the signs. This was coming. Last year was fool's gold. And there might really be some truth into all of that. But it's not like you were going to make a different move than the ones that they made. So, yes, I think it is natural as fans, anytime you give up a coordinator who ends up being brilliant somewhere else, to go, okay, well, why isn't that guy brilliant with us? But in reality, that was just not the timeline that was ever going to come to fruition for Arthur Smith and the Tennessee Titans. Do they miss him as offensive coordinator? Yeah, clearly, very much so. But I don't think that you can look at too much of what he's doing in Atlanta and think, man, that should have been Tennessee, because it was never going to be Tennessee with the timeline they had.
Oh, no, not necessarily the implication of the head coach. I think just, Jonnu Smith being down there. Rashaan Evans last year, I know, was a free agent. Marcus Mariota, like they've literally built the Titans even further south, and it's just funny to see the way that things are developing there. And Arthur, doing as much as he can with the pieces that they have in place as Atlanta tries to kind of get up back off the mat after a couple years. What's Derrick Henry worth, do you think, Trevor? Honestly, like with Eckler looking like he wants a trade, if not an extension, in Los Angeles. I know there's been some conversations around potentially Minnesota moving Dalvin Cook as well. If the Titans are taking calls on Derrick, what is an offer you would be willing to accept?
When the news kind of came out that he might be on the trade block, and there was some news that came out. It's like, no, he's not on the trade block. So now it's kind of a game of he said, she said. Who do you believe? Which sources are stronger? All that stuff. But I was very shocked when I even saw Derrick Henry's name there, because even though the Titans are clearly rebuilding a lot of their roster, if you move on from Derrick Henry, the identity is gone, right? And that's why I think for Tennessee, I don't think Tennessee would want to move on from Derrick Henry for anything less than a first-round pick. I don't know how many other teams out there in the NFL would give you a first-round pick for Derrick Henry, because he's just, for as incredible of a running back as he is the exact running back that the Titans would want. We just joked about Arthur Smith. The Falcons are probably the only team that I could really think of off the top of my head that maybe would give something like a first-round pick value for Derrick Henry, because that's what Arthur Smith wants to do. He wants to be this ground and pound type of a team. But the Falcons are obviously picking in the top 10. You're not giving a top 10 overall pick for Derrick Henry. So no matter what, you look at what Christian McCaffrey went for. He went for a couple of day 2 picks. I don't know. I mean, Henry's probably going for something if he were to be traded. The Titans would never get rid of him for anything short of a day 2 pick, probably a second-round pick. They would fight to get a first-round pick for him. Maybe they don't even move him until somebody else offers a first-round pick, but I don't even know if that would ever happen. So for Henry to be – the first thing that I thought of when I heard that his name was on the trade block was, I don't think the value is going to match what the Titans believe Derrick Henry's worth and what other teams believe Derrick Henry is worth. So even when that news initially came out, I didn't think that it was likely a deal to be had, and that's kind of my standpoint of where we are with Henry.
Trevor Sikkema here with us on 104.5 The Zone at Tampa Bay. Trey is where you can follow him. You excited about future Tampa Bay quarterback Baker Mayfield?
Great American Baker Show, baby, coming to Tampa Bay.
What the hell is that? What do I even make of that division? Like, I understand that Carolina's now officially in the driver's seat for basically this entire NFL offseason, but what the hell do I do with the NFC South?
Yeah, I mean, Carolina might be in the driver's seat, but like everything in that division is in theory.
Yeah.
I would tell you that New Orleans maybe should be the favorite as of right now to win that division, just because they're getting a proven quarterback in Derek Carr. They're trying to bring back a lot of their pieces, right? Depending on what happens with Alvin Kamara, whether he gets suspended or not, we'll see. But that roster is still pretty good, and they're bringing in a good quarterback in Derek Carr. So I actually think that the Saints should have the highest odds to win the division right now. Tampa, I don't think they're going to compete for the division unless they were to go get a Lamar Jackson. Whether it's Kyle Trask or whether it's Jacoby Brissett, whether it's Baker Mayfield, that doesn't make a difference to me, especially because of the talent they're having to offload to save and get under the cap. I don't see them winning the division next year. And then Carolina, sure, a lot of people are talking about Carolina right now, but it also kind of depends which quarterback you get, right? I love the staff that they have there. I love Frank Reich. I love Ejiro Evero. I'm intrigued about Josh McCown as the quarterback's coach. But look, if they draft C.J. Stroud, which a lot of people feel is the number one overall favorite right now, Stroud's going to have a massive learning curve going from Ohio State and the weapons that he had up from Ohio State to a Carolina Panthers team that, as of right now, their number one receiver is Terrace Marshall. Their number two wide receiver is Laviska Shenault, right? Their number one tight end is Tommy Tremble. It's just not the weapons that you had at Ohio State. So the only quarterback, really, where I could see Carolina drafting this player, and then I would say, yeah, they should be favorites to win the division, is Bryce Young. Any of the other three quarterbacks, for as talented as they are when it comes to winning a division next year, I would say that that's not on Carolina.
A player who you're looking at, just a dream scenario, regardless of situations, available players on the free agency market right now, guys who are likely going to move on from your teams. Who is a player that you want to see with a certain team in an ideal scenario, just for entertainment purposes only at this point?
Oh man,
I know that's a super broad question. I felt like I should have bought you more time, which is maybe what I'm trying to do here now, so you can think of a better answer.
So I mean, like, the pure entertainment standpoint to me is Odell, right? And like, where does Odell go that makes the biggest difference? Can we put him? I have no idea how possible this is. Have not heard any links to it at all whatsoever. But if you put Odell in Miami with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle,
God.
I'm in. I'm super in on whatever they're going to do. Buck, you could play running back for them. You could get basically they would just call it a field pass for you, an on-field pass, but they just hand you a helmet and you just get to stand in the backfield. Maybe you have to stand in front of somebody to block, but it's all right. They'll be able to get the ball out of their hands quick enough. Mike McDaniel's good enough of that, but I don't know. Odell going somewhere that makes it highly entertaining would probably be my answer for that.
Sign me up. Trevor Sikkema, the NFL Stock Exchange. It's always a must-listen, but particularly this time of year between draft, free agency. He and Connor, his co-host, do an exceptional job there. Subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure you're reading at pff.com. Buddy, thank you for making the time. It's always good to catch up. And good to see you at the Combine.
Yeah, you as well. Anytime, my friend.
Trevor Sikkema there with us on 104.5 The Zone. So the Derrick Henry stuff is interesting, right? You heard there from Trevor the idea that if the Titans were to trade Derrick Henry, the only thing that would entice them enough to move on from Derrick is a first-round pick. That is a substantially different market than we are talking about. I mean, that's substantially different from even the Christian McCaffrey trade, where most people consider that to be a pretty big overpay for a running back on a second deal. I think that's a fascinating look from the outside. And from somebody who's very well connected in the league, being Trevor, I think that's a fascinating look at kind of what teams are running up against who might be calling about Derrick Henry services at this point.
Might as well ask, I guess.
Oh, no. I mean, it doesn't hurt. All I can say is no, right?
I guess.
But a first-round pick?
Yeah, those are not the conversations we've been having.
And that's closer to the conversation that fans are having. Trevor is not an irrational person. Trevor is not blinded by love of Derrick Henry. Trevor is not local. He's a national media guy who covers the NFL and who is at all of these events, who talks to a lot of people connected in the league. And he's not out here doing sources say, but still, like, a first-round pick to get the Titans to move Derrick Henry is kind of crazy.
Couple former Vols signing some substantial deals with new teams.
Why don't we tease that coming up next? Wrapping up here on the show. Last call for phone calls if you got them. 615-737-1045 is the number. Get to a couple of contract details on some former Vols here in just a second. Zone TV chat, though. You can always interact with any of the 4 shows. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Live streaming from 6 a.m. until 6 p.m. on your favorite digital media platforms. Shane Loki on YouTube. Buck, a first-round pick is not crazy for Derrick Henry. That was something that Trevor Sikkema brought up earlier. He says a first-round pick for Derrick Henry is not crazy. He is an elite player and a generational talent who can still be a top player for 3 to 4 years the way he works out. Okay, a first-round pick is crazy. First-round pick is insane. Insane. It's not just crazy. It's bat bleep crazy, okay? He's 29 years old. He's a running back with a ton of mileage on him. Derrick could go on to have a Hall of Fame career, and it's still not worth a first-round pick. That's mind-blowing to me. Now, whether that's what it takes for them to move Derrick Henry is a different discussion. Trevor's not saying that a first-round pick is what Derrick Henry would be able to yield if you moved him. Trevor's saying it would take a first-round pick for the Titans to consider moving him. That price point is kind of insane. So, listen, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Derrick, but you have to understand what his value is right now. A team that especially on a rental deal like that, a team is not giving up a first-round draft pick. That's wild.
That also might not mean that the Titans don't understand what he is worth. It might mean the Titans don't really want to move on from Derrick Henry unless it's something insane that they couldn't possibly turn down.
Which, by the way, is what that indicates when the reporting is that they're taking calls on him, but they're not actively shopping him. They take calls on anybody. Take calls on Big Jeff. Take calls on Traylon Burks. Take calls on A.J. Brown. It doesn't matter. There's always a price. They would be negligent in doing their job if they didn't take calls on these players.
Couple of things here. The Raiders are reportedly closing in on Jimmy Garoppolo.
Blech.
And 2 former Vols.
Didn't he? Wait. Didn't he want $25 million a year, Jimmy G?
I don't have, there's no numbers yet, so we'll see what he gets.
But that's
Vegas.
what he wanted.
Maybe. I haven't seen that.
Okay, well, that was what they were talking about on the morning show. All I would say to you is Ryan Tannehill for $27 million or Jimmy G for $25. Yeah, just think about that.
Steelers corner Cameron Sutton signing a 3-year deal worth $33 million with the Lions, according to Ian Rappaport. And former Saints defensive tackle Shai Tuttle has reached an agreement with his hometown Carolina Panthers on a 3-year, $19.5 million deal.
Good for those two. That's a fun defense in Detroit if they can figure it out. They were playing a little better down the stretch, but certainly had some moments where they were just giving up points by the dozen. Last one before polls. Let's go to GE. What's up, GE?
Hey, guys. I've been out doing my civic duty this morning, but I hadn't been listening to your show until a few minutes ago. But I just wanted to call and say that the Vanderbilt performance in the last 6 weeks basically shows there's a problem with the net ranking algorithm. And I'm in favor of all the other SEC teams that got into the tournament, but with 2 wins over to Kentucky, 2 wins over Florida, beating Arkansas earlier in January, beating Mississippi State, they're basically playing better than those other teams. And if the idea of using these rankings is to identify the teams that are ready to play in the tournament, Vanderbilt languishing down at 79th is not a fair reflection. I don't know. The NCAA seems to have, adopted it pretty wholeheartedly, and the people that got in were all were ranked higher than Vanderbilt. But it basically looks like after Vanderbilt lost to Grambling, and good Lord, that was a horrible. But their season was basically shot at that point in terms of getting into the tournament. And I think I would be saying this if I was about any team, but the Vanderbilt does demonstrate the problem.
Thanks very much for the call, G. Look at that. He heard the music he knows.
I've been wanting to play the Oscars music today because the Oscars were yesterday.
I saw a really cool clip from the Oscars that I kind of wanted to play on the show today, but I didn't have time.
I did not watch any of the Oscars.
Literally all I saw is the clip that I wanted to play. But Thank you for the call, G. Yes, we talked about the Vandy slight and how I think the net is trash if a team like Vandy can't get in.
I do agree. I think I heard Will talking about it earlier, that there should be more stock in what you are doing right now.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I get that there's a whole body of work.
More heavily weight the back end of the season.
Yeah, and you should get credit for significant non-conference wins in the early part of the season. But I agree that it matters more about what you're doing now, not what you were doing in September, or not September, but in October, November, December when you were struggling.
I agree. Polls.
Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. The polls have closed and the votes have been tallied. It's the segment where bias takes over and nuance goes to die. Now, here's your favorite Buck Rising Show correspondent, Lucas. Pan, make that poll Zika.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, who sells below MSRP on any non-specialty new Ford. How far does Tennessee get in the NCAA tournament? 56% say second round. 20% say they go one and done. 20% say Sweet 16. Only 4% say Elite 8 or further.
I really think that they might get bounced first round. But I don't know what to expect from Tennessee on a regular basis, so I don't know how to feel about them in the tournament, other than I've been wildly underwhelmed with the results thus far. Dylan Elam on YouTube says it's free agency anarchy and we're talking basketball. You see, Lucas, this is why.
This is March. This is March, Dylan. This is March. I'm sorry. Sorry to inform you. I'm sorry to inform you. Who is the most likely one seed to win? That is a hilarious thing to me. The NCAA bracket comes out. It's March Madness. Why are we talking basketball?
Nobody cares about college basketball when the NFL exists.
That is so wrong. Who is the most likely one seed to win the national championship? 50% say Alabama, 23% say Kansas, 14% Houston, 13% Purdue.
That's a good question. How do you feel about that? I don't know necessarily how I feel about that.
Now, I think Alabama's the best team in the country.
Man, Purdue, if their shooters are hitting like they were in the Big Ten tournament, I obviously watched a great deal of that. And they're just such a physical mismatch inside with Edey. But yeah, Alabama made that look routine against Texas A&M.
What should Big Jeff's contract number look like over 4 years? Anthony says 5 years, $120 million, 90 guaranteed. Corey says 105, 85 guaranteed, incentives to 20.
I'm good with 4 years. 4 years, 100 mil. Guarantees, I'd probably say, if Harold is making 60 guaranteed, I'd probably do 70, 75 on Jeff.
What position should be the Titans' number one priority in free agency? 89% go offensive line.
Veteran wide receiver. That ignores what the veteran offensive line market looks like right now, and it's a bunch of less than good options, let's say. Those the polls?
Those polls.
Excellent. That's the show. Lovely to be back. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. If you missed any of the 3 hours, we have a podcast. It's called The Buck Rising Show, wherever you get your podcasts. I will be back with you tomorrow at 10 if I don't catch you tonight at 8 p.m. on A to Z Sports Prime Time. Blaine and Mickey got you next.